But first, and speaking of crazy, I mean, I've got to ask, in the words of Joker, the new movie, is it just me or is it getting crazier out there? I'll give you three quick examples. Tim Cohen, I reckon, is thinking it's getting crazier. He's a wine shop owner. For 15 years has lived in Brunswick, which is one of Melbourne's most left-wing suburbs. And he told the papers today, something's changed. In his words, outrage in this suburb has become a sport. And doesn't he know it? He was running a Melbourne Cup suite for his customers. A young woman comes in, wants to buy some beer. He says, would you like a ticket? She says, how dare you, you pig, and spits straight in his face. Can you believe that? Apparently being kind to horses means being absolutely foul to humans, and that woman would have walked away thinking she'd acted morally. In fact, she'd acted like a complete barbarian of the modern kind. Related, Andrew Rule, the Herald Sun writer. You would have seen him on my show this week talking about the winner of the Melbourne Cup. And we were celebrating the fact that, at last, for the first time in a decade, the Cup had been won by an Australian-trained horse ridden by an Australian jockey. As we said on the night, makes the Cup feel more like it's ours. Produces stories for us, which is very important. I mean, Andrew Rule, like me, is a bit of a romantic. Like me, is from the country. Like me, he knows how stories and legends help create a love for a place, make people feel connected to each other. And that's particularly important in an immigrant nation like Australia. Helps turn the place from a hotel into a home. Anyway, yesterday, Andrew Rule was on Sunrise, again saying how glad he was about the winner.
It's a lovely story. I mean, this is the horse that grew here, not flew here, in a field where almost every other horse is imported.
Now, this is unbelievable. That comment set off one of the ABC's many hard left staffers, one of their many race warriors, Osman Faruqi, deputy editor of ABC Life. Where did this ABC get these people from? He accused Andrew of racism. He tweeted on Sunrise this morning, one of the guests literally said the Melbourne Cup result was good because the winning horse grew here, not flew here. The culture is so racism poisoned, we're being xenophobic about racehorses. I mean, get over yourself, Osman. You can't celebrate what's close and dear to you without being accused of racism. That's like saying you can't love your own children most. You can't love your own town best. You can't prefer your garden. You can't prefer your wife or husband to anyone else. Otherwise you're racist and xenophobic. Well, no, you're actually heartless and strange if you don't show a particular care and love to what's around you. And what's with the abuse, Osman? How does that prove that you are nicer than Andrew Rule? Now, I've got to put this in context because I've got to point out that almost anything seems like racism to Faruqi. Like I say, a real race warrior. He presents himself, in fact, as so anti-racist. But in my opinion, he can sometimes seem racist himself, particularly when he tweets stuff like this. I love debates about sunscreen, just more evidence that white people don't belong in Australia. On this theme of anti-racist seeming racist themselves, hang on for my interview in the second part of the show. You won't believe this one. And the third example of this craziness, of the sheer intolerance from people who claim to actually be the most tolerant of us all, is the persecution of Margaret Court, the tennis legend, for having Christian views that led her to oppose same-sex marriage. Now, for that thought crime, Court was criticised by activists and damned by former tennis players like Billie Jean King. And, well, fair enough, it's a debate, you know. You don't have to agree with her. You can disagree. Unfortunately, it's not enough these days simply to disagree with someone's views. It's actually got crazier out there again. You actually now have to destroy that person. You've got to stamp out any sign that they ever existed. And so, we've had calls to remove Margaret Court's name from the Margaret Court Arena in Melbourne, where Australian Open matches get played. And now Tennis Australia seems to be giving in to these face spitters. This year it's celebrating the 50th anniversary of Rod Laver, great champion, winning the Tennis Grand Slam. But it has refused so far to tell Margaret Court if it will next year celebrate the 50th anniversary of her own Grand Slam in 1970, where she beat Billie Jean King, among others, I might point out. There's been not a phone call at all until just this morning, actually, after Tennis Australia read that in the papers that Margaret Court was actually very unhappy about this. How about that for timing? But this disrespect to Margaret Court, it doesn't seem to count that she has actually done infinitely more good than just about any one of her critics. Because she is the pastor or leader of a church in Perth that has more than 80 volunteers and staff who hand out 3,000 meals every week to the poor and the old. Her team is supporting 550 families and individuals. I wonder how many of her critics who want a name taken off the Margaret Court Arena have done anything like that kind of work for others. And we can't honour a woman who does that. Can't honour her tennis deeds because the new bullies don't like some of her thoughts. That is spitting in the face of what I thought was Australia.